All right, supposedly it's live.
All right.
Excellent. Here, get closer to the mic again. All right, hi Jeff, hi Tom, how's it going?
Hey guys.
Pretty good.
Hey Tom, you got your fiddle with you?
It's around.
Yeah, you're really gonna have to move closer to the microphone.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
Around.
better.
Yep.
For a guy who's a sound guy, you know.
Yeah, I've actually never used this mic before.
Oh, there you go. You sound good on it though.
It's supposed to be a good one, but
I like it.
not familiar with it.
It's good. Good.
SM7B.
Oh, I've got a let's say, is it a Shure? What is
Right.
it?
That's like a vocal mic, I guess.
SM what?
7B.
7B. I've got SM81.
Oh.
But my microphone dates back to 1984.
Ooh, vintage.
Wow.
I've got a crappy headset that I paid nothing for because I'm cheap.
Oh, well, you sound fine.
Oh, excellent. I paid $10 for this headset.
I paid nothing for this.
Oh, rough.
I paid $300 in 1984 dollars.
Oh, wow, jeez. A lot. That's a lot.
There's a lot for a microphone. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, everybody's working along on games, doing things. Anybody want to share?
Well, you saw my meltdown this morning.
I did. I saw your meltdown this morning.
Every time that happens to me on Facebook, you're always there like, hey, how's it going? I'll tell you how it's going.
Life is ending.
Facebook sucks. But anyway, yeah, I don't know whose fault it was. I think it was Facebook, but yeah, it corrected itself, so whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's once you told me it was intermittent, I'm like, you probably don't even have a problem per se.
You saw just it wasn't getting the right information initially from Facebook. It wasn't sending IDs that it understood. So it's almost as if the app didn't exist and they're on their server somewhere. I don't know. So
yeah, well, the moment you told me the error was host couldn't be resolved, I'm like, you're dealing with like network nodes dropping out and all sorts of stuff like that.
Well, once you said it was out of my control, that was it. It's like, okay, Raymond says it's out of my control. I'm good. I'm gonna go get a coffee.
Excellent.
So what do I hear? Do I hear drums in the background?
Just knocking things around.
Oh, okay. I still haven't gotten over and I got to get over and see your drum set, Tom.
Oh, yeah.
One of these years.
Any day now.
So apparently we're going to be meeting on Friday.
Is Tom up? Is Tom good with that?
I saw that he read back that he was, right, Tom?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, he guesses so.
This Friday? Yeah.
Yeah, this
sure.
Friday at 7, I think it is.
Sure.
Read back that he was, right, Tom? Sounds good to me. That'll be fun.
What are we
Have
doing
to decide.
this for?
What's that? Oh, what are we doing this for? Well, it just unfortunately intersected, and I had told Jeff about this, and Jeff was like, hey, we need to do a meetup, and there we go. It's all right, Tom. The social interaction will do you good.
Yep.
True.
God knows I don't get enough of that these days.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody anyway. Let's see. So, yeah, so obviously, how's Jane Austen Manor's been going?
It's going all right. It's I took the month of August off, and I'm paying for that.
How are you?
Yeah, I got to. The revenue's down, so I got to build it back up again.
Yep.
I had to take time off away from it because I was kind of spinning my wheels a little bit. So.
Yeah, sure.
But I think it's going well. I mean, the big picture's going well. It's just these little things that crop up. But we're doing an awful lot of really cool stuff with content, and that's what I'm really excited about.
Excellent.
Creating more of a sandbox kind of a experience.
Yep.
Putting things into their components so people have the ability to decorate with a bit with more uniqueness and more of their own style. And but the problem with that, of course, is it really taxes your resources, because now they're decorating a room with potentially 200 or 300 different
Yeah, exactly.
Gs, and that can be kind of not an issue for the front end, but it just can be kind of an issue getting it from the server
Yep.
into the game. So I've had to come up with some creative ways of trying to deal with that so the server wouldn't choke, but yet didn't degrade the user experience too much.
Mm. So how's that been going?
So I've got some tests in the work, and it looks pretty good. The biggest problem is legacy. I wouldn't say the biggest problem. It's actually probably pretty simple to solve, but it's making the right decision. I'm leaving that to the end. When I say legacy, I just mean they've been used to having it done a certain way.
Right.
Now it needs to be done a different way. And if I'd done this, if it was set up like this from the very start, no problem. Everybody does it the same way. But
all right,
now it's got to load differently. So it's got to load the old way the first time, and then it's got to catch up and do all the saving of all the PNGs and putting them on the server. And then when that's okay, then the next time it'll be all right. But then I got to indicate that somewhere, because you can't be downloading files that don't exist.
Yep.
Cause it to break. So you need to somehow indicate with a field in the database, yes, they're updated, or no, they haven't been updated. So that's probably not gonna be that tough to do, not time consuming, but it could fuck everything up.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's really great. I really like having your game as an example, because you just keep proving all of the stuff that I've been working at, which nobody can find value in because they haven't gotten as far as you have in terms of releasing things. So they're always like, Raymond, why do you over-engineer this? I'm like, because of those things.
Oh, that's true. I don't want to be in the situation where I'm in, where you didn't anticipate it, and now you potentially have a lot more work to do. No, and as it is, I think I do a pretty good job of anticipating things, especially on the front end. It's just back end to me is I didn't really have any guidance. I was on my own. So
right, absolutely, yeah. You're hitting all the common obstacles of right now you're having to create sort of a bridge to modify the state of your game. You find out that when you did one thing one way, trying to migrate it to a new way, you kind of have to hold on to the legacy to bridge it over, and then you have to decide at what point, when can I make this not be all this cruddy front end anymore,
Well, and also you end up with these useless appendages.
Right, that's what I mean.
Eventually, but and it's not that they're going to hurt anything. They're just kind of hanging out there, but they're just ugly.
Right, but they also they stifle change, because they're like their mental bandwidth to keep up at okay, it's got to do this and it's got to do that, and so you kind of want to get rid of those so that you don't have to keep thinking about them.
Mental bandwidth.
Yeah, mental bandwidth.
Nice. Very nice.
So yeah, Tom obviously has heard me talk at length about all this kind of stuff, but it's good to hear that somebody else is actually encountering some of these issues, because normally if you don't actually get a game off the launch pad, you never actually experience any of these needs for change.
Yeah.
Yep. And even if you do, you may find out that you get 4 players.
Yeah, exactly.
A true story I've heard.
Yeah, that's definitely happened. Definitely happened. And then the other thing is that, sometimes the more you know, you end up making the wrong decisions anyway, so all of your well-made plans don't work out. But
yeah, there's that too.
Yeah. Tom's pretty much the king of that, realizing you're over-planning it. Stop. Stop. But there are some pretty well-held truths. Basically the idea of having sort of points where you can, inject code and configure things and transform things is always good, rather than if you just have this one direct link and you sever the link, you're kind of in trouble. So, well, I'm glad to hear that that's going well. Have you given any thought to the point when you will say, everybody who is converted will convert, and then we do the hard conversion for any really late stragglers?
Never. I don't think that's ever going to be able to happen. I mean, I had to do a redesign of the database because my code was so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to create a new table to put. I had the initial table was doing too much work.
Right.
The
Yeah.
table should just have the ID and links, and so that you can get to these other tables. But it bogs down. It's all in one place. So I had to separate it out. I still have that original table, and
Right.
it's sit there because there might be somebody that comes to the game today for the first time in 4 months.
Yep.
They've got to pull the old data out of the old database. So when can I ever shut that down? I never can.
Well, that's the question. At some point, you say, all right, it's been 2 years. If you haven't logged in 2 years, is it acceptable for me to realize you haven't you came in here and you haven't been upgraded, so we're going to clean slate you?
Which should be okay.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, not that users think this way, of course, but, after 2 years, if you haven't logged in, think that the game has moved on without you.
Right, but then I have to remember that. Well, it's just, yeah, okay, I get it. But the mental bandwidth is a good term. I got to shelve that. I got to put a pin in that. I got to deal with that in 3 months or whatever it is.
Right, because otherwise, you've got this, and then if you make another change, then you're going to stack it on top of that. At some point, there's so many details you can't make adequate decisions and anticipate how things are going to work.
That's true. Yeah.
Because that's basically how it gets. And it's a lot of the reasons why I spent a lot of time on the basically your database is equivalent to the state in my game, and I have a lot of work put into it such that I can change it as easy as possible, without potentially causing problems. I mean, there are still exceptions, but most of the time you don't end up with any sort of lingering cruft.
Well, I think yours. You have to explain a little bit how yours works is all the information that the player has stored on the device?
Yes and no. Now especially, which is something I was going to talk about. I've moved away from having user accounts, which is, I think, a really good idea in the long run because nobody really wants to create yet another user account. And I wasn't really interested in doing integration with OAuth and everything because they're really a pain to integrate with. That's what Facebook and Google use. Sometimes you'll go to a website and you'll be like, sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook.
Yes.
So instead, I just decided to. Yeah, I decided to just deep six user accounts altogether, which I think is a good idea in the long run because, I don't relish the idea of holding on to people's user information. So what happens instead in this case is I use what's known as browser local storage, which is a fairly new HTML5 feature, new as in years ago at this point. But it allows me to store decently structured data inside the browser. Now, as you can guess, this is, it's limited to the browser and the device. The information doesn't, commute over different devices and everything. Right. So it's local. But it's more permanent than, say, like a cookie from a website.
It wouldn't clear if somebody clears their history or their cache, that doesn't get cleared?
If they did a forcible clear on their cache, like they went there and they deleted their history, it would clear. But, that's just the reality. It's
if they're using some of these plugins that just clear all the crap, local storage cookies, anything that can be used to track you from one login to the next, some of those will probably clear local storage too.
It's possible, yeah. I haven't looked into exactly the length and the breadth of it, but the thing is I've been looking around, and most mobile devices in particular, they all have this same sort of idea that you essentially have app data, and app data can get cleared. And the idea is the really only sensitive parts of it that you really only care about are your save games. So ultimately, I will create a way so that you can get them off the device and onto a server, or if you want to like download them to preserve them. But the real idea here is that it's supposed to be pretty transient. I don't want people like relishing and holding on to information because it actually makes life harder for me, as you know.
Yeah.
And in particular, the real detail that was important here is I used to use user accounts so that people, that's how it would keep track of what you bought, what you own, etc. So instead now I'm using local storage, and when people buy things, we just generate, keys for them, like a serial key. And if they clear their local storage or anything, they can simply re-enter their key. And the way it works is it revalidates on the server, so the server does know what keys are out there, and it keeps track of who purchased it. So generally speaking, we're pretty free with the keys. It's like, okay, if you want to use this key, that's great. But the server does keep track of the positions where it's being authenticated from and how many times it's been authenticated. So there will be some automatic features, like if you're using Spotify and it's like, hey, you're listening in too many different places. So if the key starts getting hammered on, it'll auto lock itself out. And then, we'll send an email to the email we have on file letting them know that it's been locked out and giving them an option to re-enable it.
It sounds like a lot of layer of bureaucracy, though.
It is a little bit, but on the other hand, it kind of has to be. The idea is when you do it, the way you make it work is 90% of the time it shouldn't be an issue. And in general, it shouldn't be an issue. The only time I think it'll be an issue is if somebody accidentally or on purposefully leaks their key in an effort to circumvent, basically steal the software. And in that case, it shouldn't be a problem. If we have somebody who did accidentally leak their key, we'll just void that key, or keep it voided if it was, and vend them a new key, and they'll have to come back to us. And if they're a repeat offender, I think we'll get the idea pretty quick.
So you can tell if two people are accessing using the same key at the same time?
Yes, we can definitely see if two people are using it at the same time, and the ultimate goal is to hopefully use some decent location of the IP address to kind of get an idea that, yeah, you didn't jump from the United States to Singapore in 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, Geo IP, right? There's this database of all the IP addresses, mapping them approximately where
I've heard about it, yeah. So I haven't figured out how to use that yet. And the nice thing about this is we can start very open, and I can make it more draconian as it becomes needed. So at the moment, I'm simply logging, the IP of who authenticated it last and how many times it's been authenticated. So we'll have a look at that. But it doesn't pay to be draconian up front, I don't think.
I know you're opposed to
hi,
using
Justin.
Cordova, but
Oh, Jesus.
but why can't you just use Cordova so that way on mobile devices you can use their native app storage, and like on Android it'll back up automatically to wherever it puts Android, and on iOS it'll automatically put it into iCloud, and the app is linked to the account on the phone. There's no login, but
Right.
It's linked to the account through the App Store where they got it.
Well, so that's sort of a thing. First off, I might eventually, but the goal here is that I have unified code base. So I write code once, and then hopefully it runs everywhere, which in theory you could do with Cordova, but that requires being dependent on Cordova. And I don't know Cordova. I don't know who manages it. I don't really like being dependent on it. And you can say that that's a little, what's the word? Somebody give me the word.
Paranoid?
Paranoid. There we go, paranoid. But if you look at it, Xbox Live Arcade went bye-bye. Flash has gone bye-bye. Sorry, Jeff.
Oh, what was that one that it was like
All
phone
my
app or
players has
something?
gone bye-bye.
So build an app, run it on iPhone and Android.
Phone
Bought it
app?
and killed it.
What's that?
It was like write an app once, run it on iPhone and Android, and Microsoft bought it and just killed the project.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
Microsoft
yeah,
bought Xamarin, but
Oh.
they didn't kill it. They're really expanding on it.
Yeah, I don't think it was Xamarin.
So that being said, if there are tools whereby you can take an otherwise native HTML5 app and then create, an app-specific native endpoint, I would definitely be interested in that. But I'm not really interested in. It's for the same reason I don't even use CoffeeScript. It's like I really want to utilize something as close, to the metal as possible, because then you don't get jumped by changes in technologies and support and everything. You pretty much control everything yourself.
How much of this are you expecting to be mobile users?
Right, so that's another question. I have no idea right now. I would hope a lot, but possibly none, From our site surveys, we are seeing a lot of mobile usage, but that's not exactly telling of who will play via it.
I'm just wondering, though, if is there any mobile HTML potential at all? Isn't mobile all just native applications?
Well, Cordova wraps HTML5 application into a native application. You probably use a lot of them. You can sometimes tell, but I've noticed like a lot of online banking apps and small company apps are all just HTML5 wrapped up into a bootstrap native thing, and you can use something like Cordova to make it easier, but you can do it manually as well. But Cordova has some nice platform agnostic APIs. Most of them try to leverage the HTML5 JavaScript specs. So like file access, it tries to keep that as transparent as possible, and some other things.
Yep. Yeah, as an example, when we hopefully are going to start releasing some of our HTML5 games on Steam, it's been a question of how to do that, because, Steam, like the rest of the world, has yet to grasp the idea that a game can be at the end of a link. We have done some experimentation with a C# and Chromium app that basically runs HTML5 within a native application. So it's basically the same idea, is you want to have a native wrapper for the application. And the question is just how many platforms we end up doing it for. In theory, that could get you to Steam, and it could get you to a couple of different distributors. And then eventually, yeah, you could also wrap them for specific iOS or Android endpoints. But at the moment, the ideal is having a play-in browser feature for both desktop as well as tablets.
Right. Now, I wonder sometimes, because if there's any life for me after Flash, I still think it'll be some web-based something or other.
Yeah, I learned pretty quick about 5 years ago that nobody is trying anything that requires downloading unless it's on Steam or some other platform.
Right.
Right. I was thinking, if you don't trust Cordova, but you trust these like 5 different browsers to keep working.
I trust 3 different browsers to keep working, roughly 3 different sort of overarching things. The bright side is they can't completely screw Canvas and HTML5. It's pretty unlikely at this point. And it is nice that I'm not using too many features outside of pretty much Canvas, which is good.
Good for you.
I started with using the DOM, and I ran into issues with that pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I envy you in that way. I was headed down the way to, before Jane Austen came along, I was headed down the way to doing more Canvas stuff, but I was just going to just do it for my own, for future stuff. I need to do something, that could start making money. So, but sure. I can easily see a few months worth of transition to turn Jane into a Canvas.
Oh, at least, yeah. And it's not all rainbows. There are significant performance benefits from Flash being a plugin.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I think the performance would be much better. It's all bitmap, and there's no generation of any vectors, pretty much. So.
Oh no, actually, in general, Flash tends to still be faster than HTML5.
Well, I guess it depends on. I don't have a problem with speed.
Yeah, it does depend on what you're doing, of course.
The problem mainly has to do with transfer from the server back and forth. Now, once it gets, it's not either one of them is going to run fine.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm not generating a lot of. It's not a first-person shooter game. I'm worried about that kind of processing. I'm sure the CPU is not working that hard, but just the fact that I could be liberated from that and to be liberated from Flash and just have everything kind of contained inside of a canvas element is it's an appealing concept. Oh
yeah, I mean I do it for a reason, definitely, because I don't like to have in between platforms kind of dictate change to me. if I can help it, and as you say, you can never get away from it exactly, but you can get further away from it, so you can start it, writing a very open and language in Notepad, and then you can move up to a fairly commercial IDE like C#. Then you get into sort of like a production tool like Flash or Unity, and I'm not exactly sure what the next thing is, but there's probably still one other layer that you could go there. Like, oh, you use a game making service online that they just closed the shop one day.
Well, like Turbo Pascal back in the day, I started with stuff like that, and I'd worked my way down to GCC and command line stuff. Just roll your own everything.
Right. It's there's definitely benefits to either direction. You give up and you gain.
Yeah. Then I make my own
direction.
editors for the games.
Right, I do as well, which, that it takes time, it takes effort, but in theory you can write an editor that is far more tailored to your product, which that's the one thing that I tend to have trouble with. I mean, lots of people do a lot of good work in, Unity and etc., but they're still using a fairly fixed tool to do their work. But some people are okay with doing that. I don't tend to be. I'm like, well, if I want this image, why can't I just have this button to load it? Why do I have to add it to this other object and then attach it to this other thing and do a million steps just to get this, object?
Yeah.
So, but that's because, I know too much for my own good as a programmer.
Yeah, so like Jeff's got Flash. You'd rather just do everything in Canvas, no HTML, no nothing.
Yep, ideally. I mean, the one benefit here is that in theory, if I wanted to escape Canvas because it went down and everybody got rid of it, the majority of my code could probably be ported to a JS engine running in C# and using SDL2 as the front end or something,
Yeah, you'd think.
I could probably make it happen.
To C++ and OpenGL.
Why would Canvas die?
It wouldn't, but it's just.
I mean, the web might die.
Yeah, you want to get away from
Canvas
browsers.
Dies, but that's the only way the Canvas is going to die is if the web dies.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Or something big comes along, and like Flash, nobody uses it, and it languishes. But see, the thing is that Flash, because it's a commercial product, it has a far more likelihood of going bye-bye, because it's all locked up.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm sure somebody's going to come out with an authoring software for Canvas for artists. For people who don't necessarily have a good handle on code, but know some code.
Well, I think the problem is that
it's a blank slate. You're on your own basically. If you don't know all this stuff, then that's why nobody likes it.
Oh yeah, it has like no ecosystem. It has no You have to be a programmer and a very slick programmer at this stage, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think anything's going to come out just for it, but there will be engines and tools that probably export to it. With HTML5 and Canvas as a target.
Yeah.
So-
The one that Flash has, the HTML5 converter is just horrible.
Right. Well, the problem with HTML5 is, at least at the moment, the margins for performance are so thin, and you can ask Tom, he knows. The margins for performance are so thin, you can't really have a blunt converter tool doing the work because it's going to botch it every time at this point.
Also, it looks like, I don't know if you remember when I first started doing websites, Dreamweaver would create the website for you. It was what you see is what you get.
Yeah, exactly.
But the code was ridiculous. There's no way to know what was going on.
It's the same thing, basically. There's no intelligence between the front end and then the output target. So there's no problem with HTML5 and JS being an output target. It's just at the moment, most of your products are not going to produce very well performing things, because I have to reduce my design thoughts as well as tweak the heck out of things to squeeze good performance across devices on it.
Mm.
Yeah, the problem with JavaScript is, it's a dynamic language. Everything's all up in the air. The compiler, well, you don't really have a compiler. You've got this interpreter that's got to keep looking at what you're doing and saying, "Oh yeah, it looks like he's using all integers there, so we can optimize that on the fly and recompile."
This function hasn't changed in the last 100 calls. We can compile that.
Yeah. So it's like, sometimes if you do everything right and you keep everything consistent and you don't use garbage collection too much, then you can get some pretty fast code, like Java speed, like a couple times slower than C.
Yep.
Other times you can be 100 times slower than that.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it's, if you combine, JavaScript is not that terrible. The only things that I've really found in JavaScript that are awful, there's lots of programming paradigms, very good programming paradigms, that require that you create and destroy very small objects. And Tom knows this one. What's that?
That's crap. You shouldn't do that.
Well, yeah, you shouldn't. Well, I mean, it's okay if you have a language that actually has objects on the stack. It's not that bad. So point objects are a great example. So you create a point object and then you use, the adding operator on it, and it gives you another point object as the return. If you're doing that on the stack, it's not so bad, because you're just writing to this block of memory that doesn't actually get allocated and freed. You're just moving up and down it. And I might be going over everybody other than Tom's head at this point, although I think Justin knows a lot about this too, right?
Well,
Hey!
in JavaScript, if you wanted to simulate,
Can you turn up your mic, Justin?
Huh?
Can you turn up your mic?
No, I can't. It's an iPhone.
Oh,
Can you talk really loud?
Yeah, yell at it.
If you wanted to simulate the stack in JavaScript, you can just use what are they called? The array buffers. It's not an array buffer, but the typed arrays with the array with the buffer view.
Oh, yeah.
The problem is there's no language support for it.
But I mean, it's a first class thing. Every browser supports it.
Right, but I'm talking about P2 equals P1 plus P3.
But you can use property getter and setters to intercept it, to where after you've wrote your class, and you do, you access it as a property, then it'll just be backed by that and kind of simulate that.
Well, let me put it this way. I can't exactly see it, so if you want to write a small example to blow my mind, I would love to see it. I'm not sure.
First off, I wonder if that's efficient, or does it have to run those getter and setter functions every time you want to access that variable?
I don't know. I just know I've used the hack to make something work like a union.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I use those typed arrays like for WebGL or OpenGL, anything like that. You just want to list like a flat array of X and Y's, X1, Y1, X2, Y2, and so
Yeah,
on.
and you don't want to touch it per thing. See, that's the main issue with JavaScript is when you start touching tiny byte level objects, you lose quick.
Yeah, because it does like this sort of, it allocates them on a heap, and then behind the scenes it's actually allocating a lot of that stuff on the stack. And then when the stack fills up, it'll just copy that stuff all off to another copy of the stack and clear it. And it'll move some of the longer term stuff into heap objects.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
Garbage collector.
It's been fun trying to find the performance about JavaScript, but you'll find in JavaScript you have a performance issue, and then your solution to it ends up being worse than the performance issue. So you're like, well, I'll put that back. So what I ended up doing for a lot of those sort of arithmetic things is just moving more towards the C methodology, whereby you call a function and you pass in your object, and then it's modified in place. It's not nearly as convenient because you don't get to use this really nice sort of C equals A plus B, sequence. But you create one object and then you pass it through a pipeline of functionality. So it's definitely far more performant, because that was one of the first things we discovered is, we were just creating point objects and deleting them, and then we would look at the browser and it's like, what the hell is it doing? Oh, the garbage collector's running all these damn point objects.
Yeah,
I've also seen with JavaScript, it's not specifically for games, but for repeaters, for like you're showing a table and it may be paginated, maybe not, but you have a bunch of rows. I've seen some interesting solutions for larger tables that'll only allocate however many rows you have, and when you scroll, it'll have like couple extra rows off screen, and it'll just recycle them, so it's not reallocating.
Oh.
Yep. So that's like that's the juggle kind of method.
Yeah. So if you're doing like some particles, that would be probably the way to go.
Yeah. Object recycling it's very common. A good way to solve that, actually. It doesn't work so well in this one. I mean, it could, you could basically say, oh, give me the object to do this, and then it could be in charge of saying, okay, I'll use this one because it's not in play, and I'll make a new one because it's not at my limit, and I won't collapse it down. We've definitely done some stuff like that as a performance enhancement, and it kind of sucks. You're like, this is 2016, I shouldn't have to be doing this crap, but
I mean, you still have to do that even in C# on the back end, because it pins things to the large object heap, and it won't defragment that part of the heap, anything over a certain size.
Right.
So once it gets fragmented, it's you can run out of memory with only having a quarter of your memory in use. And so if you look at like the internals of how some of the web services work, where it automatically generates web services, they've like written something to basically be a garbage collector to recycle giant arrays. It's ridiculous.
Right, yeah. We've definitely dealt with that. And I mean, you had to deal with that to a certain degree. One notable thing that I did it was a really bad design now that I think about it, but it doesn't matter. Back in Morning's Wrath, which was in C++, I would have it such that every tile on the map could actually have a name associated with it. Now, if I was smart, I would have simply, had a car pointer that was mostly null there. But I really wanted to utilize a string object, so I found that I was just using an empty string object, but it was eating 16 bytes nominally. And I was like, "Oh, that's not good." So ultimately, I ended up using, a string pointer there, so I would only eat 4 bytes. And then, the downside is that in order to use it, you have to make sure you fill it with a brand new string object, and you have to actually collect it later. But so that's kind of an example. Would have been better just to use a different methodology of how I name tiles. like a sparse array or something. But that was a little beyond me at that time.
Oh yeah. Basically in C++, there's that data-oriented design thing where it's like, forget about all these fancy structures. Just allocate fixed size pools of every type of object. Say like
Right.
I'm gonna need at most 100 characters in this game. So,
Yep.
So
And then
that's what
it's
I'm gonna allocate.
allocated
I'll allocate
statically.
200 just to be safe, but
And yeah, the downside from that, of course, is so that's performance. It's performance minded, but it's not flexibility minded.
yeah. And in C++, that saves you from some of the STL fuckery. That really slows you down. And in JavaScript, it saves you from garbage collection. You just pre-allocate like a typed array if you can, or a regular array if not.
Yep.
And just keep reusing slots in it.
Yep, and it's just funny how it really flies in the face of actual good code writing and good clean code writing. It's
Yeah,
sort of
we
the
did like 30 years ago.
well, yeah. But it's just funny how
Basic.
in order to get more performance, you have to make your code awful, basically.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to see the guts of Emscripten. I think that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, so that's the
Oh,
is it
yeah.
the JS to C or C to JS?
C to JS.
C++
Yeah.
to JS.
And I have used a couple things that have been converted with that, and it's astonishing that it works. It's
So
just
have I
crazy.
actually. The one that I saw recently-ish, and recently I mean probably a couple years ago now, was faster than light. They had made a HTML5 version of it, and I believe they had used Emscripten. And just sort of looking at the output code, which was difficult to see, I'm pretty sure they had an assembly like executor written in JavaScript.
Yeah.
Which to
Yeah.
me, I was like, how is
ASM?
this fast? But
It's,
You guys remember
it's crazy.
ASM.js?
I do.
Yeah, it was that. It's like if you write a JavaScript module, you put some string at the top of it that declares that it's an assembly.js file. It's all like, like if you write an integer constant with like plus or minus in front of it, that means something to the.
Mm.
It interprets that as a certain type of.
Yeah, I think that was a Firefox thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, totally.
I don't know where it went, but
Chrome got it. I don't know. But it's like you could never write this stuff by hand. It's not like writing assembly. It's like 100 times worse.
so what were you saying about Emscripten more?
Oh, that's what it outputs. They added that to it. I mean, it
Oh.
can do plain JavaScript or this ASM.js optimized JavaScript.
Huh.
It's crazy stuff.
Interesting.
But that makes it perform better. It compiles it more like a regular compiler, not so much dynamic stuff.
Well, I know Google has some stuff to compile and optimize JavaScript into something. Probably just
yeah,
more
they have
confusing JavaScript.
Closure compiler, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that, yeah.
Mm. I tried Closure compiler, and it's like, yeah, this code you're writing, we won't compile this code. It broke it. Apparently, there's just some at least when I looked at it, unwritten rules that you have to adhere to that you can't do things.
Like you can't reference, like if you have a variable on an object, or I guess a property on an object, and you assign the name of that property to a string somewhere, then access it using the indexer. Well, when it compiles and minifies, it's going to change all the variable names to gibberish.
Yep.
So you've got to put special comments all over the place for things that you want to keep a certain way or whatever. Or they've got some convention where if you have to do it by an indexer, you do like object.name or something like that.
Oh, so
Yeah.
like that Doxygen type comment code you see everywhere with.
Yeah.
There's like more comments than code, and it's all this formulaic shit.
Yeah,
much.
some of you might.
API docs that nobody reads.
I was going to say, some of you might know that I worked on a pretty significant code mungification project, which I am quite proud of. We actually utilized the ES project, which is managed by jQuery to actually parse our entire JS code base into an abstract syntax tree and then do some really heavy transformations on it, actually utilizing, I think it's MD5 keys with prefixes such that all the variables essentially become cryptographically modified. It's really funny. I mean, it's really great in terms of when you look at this stuff, there's just no way you're going to do it. But it actually, when I was developing it, we had a whole bunch of code base that we weren't really sure. They were like wondering, so can we make something that's going to work or not? And I'm like, I literally mathematically cannot tell you if I can make a program transformation that will work. If I could answer that for you, like, actually it would be I'd be solving that NP hard problem, like the halting problem.
Oh yeah. Right.
So, but so we had to just sort of soldier on, thinking, well, we think we can work all the bugs out of this, but there's no way that we could know with any amount of surety, because to know would be to know that you can actually get a program that will run completely, which is not knowable.
So you're saying you can't use this?
No. Thankfully we did, and it actually worked. But the point is that until you actually since we were doing code transformations that were, it was all programmatic. There was no way to know that we were going to make something that could completely work, because there's just no way to know. It's like rewriting all the variable names, but we're rewriting all the variable names in sort of very interesting ways.
Right. So it's
I'm
like
just
a lot
curious,
of web
what was the purpose of that?
The purpose is code security, which is to say that you shouldn't be able to. So I'll go a little bit further. The idea is that deminifiers, deobfuscators had gotten really good, and because we had done a first generation where it was pretty good, but they had actually created some stuff which unobfuscated it and brought it back to sort of readable sense. Now, of course, we realize that no amount of obfuscation secures code 100% to any degree, but the ability to actually grok and understand the code can be heavily, modified. And the problem that we were running into is that it's really hard to just modify the code programmatically a little bit and still get something that won't deobfuscate. So what we ended up doing is we wrote some stuff that basically made it such that it wrote the code in a different language. Not exactly a different programming language, but basically if Programmerese was its own language, that's what it was written in. And the Programmerese was written in such a way that you can't reverse the Programmerese even if you knew some of the original words, because we used one-way hashes. So it was very cool, very awesome project. Certainly one of the best that I've ever worked on. But it introduced these very interesting things, such that changing the order of code, or changing code would switch up the hashings that were created because of the order of encounter. There were major issues with the fact that you couldn't hash built-ins. So if you came across like .length, you can't hash .length because the API still needs to utilize it. So I had to create an extensive set of sort of exhaustively having the browser tell me all of its built-ins.
Oh yeah.
And then making sure that those were whitelisted. Yeah, so there were a whole bunch of things. Oh, and then the other thing is we had a whole bunch of resources, that like HTML files, text files, etc., which would have references to variables in them and all sorts of stuff. So the processor had to open these up and find out what we had transformed them to and re-inject them there so that they were congruent. But it all works, and it works really good. And it works so good, in fact, that it's really hard to debug our code in the field. Because basically,
It's almost like you need a .map file.
You laugh. When we generate it, I do generate a key, which basically maps it. It's the because it was created, that's what we have for it. And then I created a application which I call the crystal ball application. So if you type in a hash, as long as the map file is present, it will reverse it and tell you what it should be.
Is this the browser built-in map support? Source maps, right, Justin?
Yeah, I'm thinking that that'd be nice if he could generate the browser built-in support source maps.
I don't know.
I could use that right about now for one of my projects.
You're talking about like sitemaps?
No.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So you make this obfuscated, minified JavaScript code, you put that out there on a live site.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got this other thing called the source map that maybe goes up only on your dev site or something. So the general public can't get it, but you get it. And you can go and look at your site. Maybe it just reads it from the file system as a local file.
Basically, it's instructions on how to deobfuscate. So if you can actually debug and step through the deobfuscated JavaScript while it's executing the minified JavaScript, like it's like a translation layer. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah,
that is cool.
Maps like line numbers and variable names, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much everything. Like you can actually it'll show when it loads the source maps and you're looking in the debugger, there'll be a different color in Chrome, and you can just set breakpoints and everything, and it's like it never changed.
That's freaking awesome. Okay, I gotta look into that. That's cool. Thank you for telling me about that. That's a neat feature because we should be able to design those.
Yeah, and I could get rid of my sort of development make file where I'm just like, okay, just concatenate all this code, but don't minify it.
Yep. So that's another thing that I really can't stand. Why have we not gotten to the point where JavaScript has some decent standard of multi-file anything?
Do
you know what I mean? Does it?
Because web designers are morons.
ES6 has import and export as kind of first-class ideas. There's not enough browser support yet, so you have to transpile it to JavaScript to ES5 and then use something like AMD or CommonJS to handle loading the multiple files. But in theory, one day the browsers will support it and it'll automatically be able to load the includes.
So, but those will still result in individual HTTP calls, won't they?
Well, it depends. There's several different things that will automatically follow the import statements.
I see.
To combine it all into one output. Like one of my projects that I've got for trying to do the procedural content junk. I'm writing it in ES6, so I'm transpiling it to ES5 anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And mostly because I just like using the class, using the word class and putting, properties on an object and not, having all that weird junk to make a object a class. But since I have to transpile it anyway, I use Browserify, and that's part of my build process. So I've got a source folder, and then the dist folder is just one JavaScript file.
Gotcha.
And everything is all in it, and each file, or what they call them modules. Each module is completely isolated, so you don't have to worry about polluting a global scope or anything like that, because because everything in that file is basically a local scope.
Right.
The only things that will be exposed are the things you assign to the exports object.
Yep.
Right. So it's kind of like Node.js.
Yeah, it's exactly like Node.js.
So basically, all this stuff exists, but people have been arguing about it for like 5 years, and it never gets into the browsers. So it exists, and
well,
it's just like CoffeeScript.
ES6 has formalized the import and export syntax, and so it's just a matter of time before it's embraced.
Matter a long time, probably.
Yeah. Well, they still haven't done it on the bleeding edge browsers, so it's gonna be like 5 years till we can really use it.
Yeah.
Unless you want to use stuff like CoffeeScript, well, Browserify, whatever, same deal.
Yep.
More layers.
Anyway, all right. So, game stuff.
Yeah.
So you're working on a new game, right, Tom?
Yeah, idea I've had for a while. Just do a simple RPG on
Nice.
the browser based.
Simple.
Yeah, old school. Maybe no animations even, or really limited.
There you go. Yep. I mean, we all.
Grid-based.
I think the thing which we've all learned is that there's absolutely nothing simple. Absolutely nothing is simple. There's only really hard and unbelievably, unfathomably hard.
Well, yeah, I mean, just really hard,
You don't realize how hard it is when you think you're just doing the not easy project. So yeah, I mean, definitely, I think Tom understands. Thankfully, it's all about getting something halfway decent, and getting it working and out there, and then leaving it alone. For the most part. Go ahead.
So I started working on a RPG project also, but it has animations. I decided to pick up the RPG Maker engine, which is JavaScript. Previous versions were not, but their latest version, everything is in JavaScript. So it's not even like translated to JavaScript. The engine is JavaScript. So the editor is pretty handy, but I can look around in the source files and I know what everything does. Whereas Unity, I don't know what the hell's going on with Unity.
Oh, Unity.
But with this, it's all JavaScript, and it's like my old the game the games that it makes by default look like the old Super Nintendo style RPGs.
Yep.
With a little bit better color depth, but I understand the language it's written in. I understand the documentation and how to extend it, and it comes with some art assets built in, and it's got really cheap DLCs, I guess, to buy assets from their asset marketplace. So I can do less artwork and just use crap that other people have done, and be okay, because I'm okay with that. But something else I realized is there's a lot of people that write extensions to this engine, and people give them money on Patreon. And so it's like, if I know I want to add, I want to extend one of the system, subsystems that it has to do something kind of cool with my magic powers,
as a programmer,
there's the potential that I could, actually make money. Because I know the game isn't going to make money, but an extension.
Yeah, it's sort of been a long-term. I've always kind of wanted it to some degree, but in a lot of ways, I think I make better tools than I make games. But but I've never had an exceptional, ecosystem to really flex that, and I've never been, part of one that I thought worthwhile. But I am interested now that I hear that RPG Maker is apparently in JavaScript, because that's news to me. RPG Maker has been kind of the butt of many, if not every, joke until Unity came around.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I think a lot of that is deserved, but it sounds like they've made some big changes, so I'll have to give it another look.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard decent things about it for sure.
It's got a 20-day free trial, and then after that, it's only $70. So, I mean, it's not like a huge investment.
Did you
But,
say 70?
Yeah, like $75.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, it's not bad for a tool, and I mean, that's sort of the key. I mean, I think if you're going to buy a tool like that, you should buy it purposely for a game or a set of games and have it as close to what you're really wanting to do as possible, rather
Yeah.
than, Unity. With Unity, let's face it, you're probably making a first or third person shooter, and everything else you're kind of going against, the waves.
Yeah.
And it's too complicated for its own good, which is, it tries to be everything, and it has to be everything because it bills itself as the game engine for everything.
And everything with Unity is just a few more dollars.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not a few more
Yeah.
dollars, just a lot of more dollars.
It's subscription,
but
isn't it?
Everything is more money, more money, more money.
Yeah, and I mean that it makes sense, especially for people who are not willing to use other technology or write their own technology, whether they're able or willing. But yeah, people are definitely doing good things with Unity, or things with Unity at least.
Yeah, I've actually heard better things about RPG Maker lately.
Yeah.
So what is the deal with Unity, if they don't mind me asking?
It's like Flash, but with 3D.
So Unity is, at this point, I think you can consider it a sort of, mid-grade industry standard game development engine / platform. It's a program that you use to make games, and it requires a certain amount of programming to do anything serious with it. But overall, yeah.
How does it publish?
How does it publish? It builds standalone EXEs as well as applications for iOS and Android if you pay extra money, as far as I remember. That
Yeah,
might be
something like
free.
that.
Yeah.
It's also capable of doing consoles. But
Okay.
you have to have the proper agreements with the console developers or makers to be able to even get the license.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it does Linux too, and
At least at the moment, from what I understand, basically there is indie game developer gets Unity, puts game on Steam. That's pretty much
yep.
because that's you see a
Early
lot
access,
of Steam games.
never
Yeah,
heard
early
from
access.
again.
Exactly. Which is, it's kind of interesting and it's kind of disheartening. I watch a lot of sort of long plays, especially for like little horror games, and people do kind of, crappy little decent horror games. It's really like sort of Flash era.
Did you just say
ecosystem.
crappy little decent?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
crappy
pretty
little
much.
decent.
Crappy little decent. Yeah, you look at them and it's like, well, this is not complete crap, but it's it's not really that great. It was free.
It's like a college project, not really something you'd pay money for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't have great production
Not something
value.
you would play to be entertained, more like to humor the person and say like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, you're learning.
So
Yeah.
it seems to me that the Unity thing is it promises for it to be for you to be able to be a better producer than you really are.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's a tool, and I should also mention it's a 3D game engine, so you can do 2D in it, but it's a 3D game engine.
But don't you need to have some kind of like graphic artist skills and
Oh, absolutely.
make it work? And
You
yeah.
can. I prototyped with Unity. God, it was years ago. It was before Cheyenne, so it was at least 6 years ago. So I prototyped out a pinball machine game in a couple of days, and I actually sorted out all kinds of crazy physics that happen because, rotational collision detection is kind of wonky on every device and engine that you can come up with. But I was able to prototype it out without any artwork. I was able to just draw boxes. You can take a cube and grab the corners and shape it to whatever you want. And so I made the entire pinball machine out of giant boxes that I sheared and sized and tied up the events to it. And in theory, I could have probably made an actual game if I had art. But I kind of got it working, and I was like, oh, okay, this is neat. And that's about much. I mean, you can rapidly prototype something with no art skill whatsoever, and in theory, start replacing your objects in the tree with meshes instead of being just a box or a primitive type shape.
Oh yeah, so just like meshes and textures and.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it supposes 3D modeling, skinning, texturing, animating experience.
I think well, I don't know. I mean, I think I don't want to be too judgmental about it because I really don't know that much. I'm pretty ignorant of it.
Sure.
But it just seems like that most of the people that are kind of promoting it are they seem like they're out of their league anyway a bit.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. I mean, well, you're basically at the moment you're either up in the high echelons of AAA-ism, and you're probably not using Unity. You're using Unreal Engine or your homebrew, your company developed engine, or then there's sort of this then there's the really high indies, some of them who use heavily modified versions of Unity. Then there's a big old gap, and then there's the sea of everybody using Unity, who probably won't get very far with it, and then there's varying degrees of how well they do with it, I think.
Well, it kind of sucks for me to know that I have all these really mad skills, but because I don't, how can I possibly do work for other people with the skills that I have? It's just so hard. It doesn't mesh with anything else. So my only option is to do my own thing. I mean, this is a very serious thing this game that I'm making is very serious. We have a lot invested in it. It really has to succeed. I'm all in on this.
Sure.
It's not a hobby.
Right. So
because I tried to go the freelance, do freelance work, and I just it was just discovered that I was talented, but my skill set was so narrow. How can we find something for Jeff to do? And it was I realized that wasn't going to be very easy. I don't play well with others. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, I mean, me neither. So, I'm as far as I can gauge, everyone in the valley, both Tom and Jeff are near me in Massachusetts. Everybody in the valley uses Unity. Mm-hmm. I don't. Would you coin that as generally being correct at the moment?
Well, I don't touch it.
Well, not so. Most game developers in the area, as far as I've noticed, seem to use Unity. I don't see anybody rolling their own stuff. I mean, there's obviously some Flash holdouts like Jeff, but it seems like everybody's moved to Unity, and all I see are people praising how awesome Unity is and all that.
Hey, I hate to interrupt, but I gotta get going.
All right. Well, thank you for joining.
Yeah, it was fun, y'all.
Cool. Well, hope you see you guys. So, Unity. I think lots of people are using it. It's clearly working for a lot of people. I certainly remember the time before Unity, where basically lots of people were getting into Flash gaming and mobile apps. And then before that, there was this time where a good amount of people wanted to make games, but nobody could grasp C++. That's basically how I remember it in a nutshell.
Yeah, everything had gotten so complicated that regular people just couldn't do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not the same as making a text adventure in BASIC.
I guess that was like late night, like the second half of the '90s, basically, and then Flash came along.
Yeah,
pretty
through
soon.
the 90s and then, early OOs, Flash came along and people said, hey, I can make cool animations in Flash. And then smart people said, oh, well, I can make interactive animations with Flash. And then, it goes from there. You get games. Then the gigantic debate of our Flash games. They got more advanced. Flash ends up being kind of a blunt tool in the long run as far as, where it can go and what it can do. And then ultimately, I think in the late 2007 we start seeing Unity rise up, which is more of an open, we missed out a whole bunch of things. Xbox and Xbox Live Arcade with XNA came out, which was a fairly easy route for people who did know how to program. They could actually start using DirectX because C# isn't as scary as C++ was. And XNA managed a whole bunch of it for you. So that's really, these tools came about, both XNA as a library and then Unity as a whole sort of development ecosystem to just make it so that artistic people with some technical skills can actually build and release good stuff.
All right. Well, good to have the history.
Yeah, well, that's at least how I gauge it. I'm sure other people would have a better sense of it, but so yeah, I mean, Unity, lots of people use it, lots of people like it. It has kind of like Photoshop. I don't know if you used Photoshop and you'll look at a piece of art and you'll be like, oh my god, it's like dripping with Photoshop, because they've used every bell and whistle that Photoshop has in a sort of unabashed manner because they're new to Photoshop. Unity kind of has that, just like Flash did as well. So you're like, oh, this is a Flash game. I can tell because they're using vector tweens,
Right, exactly. That's interesting you mention that, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
But it was quite a few years ago that I stopped using tweens altogether because it just it started. You could tell the animation had a certain feel to it.
Yep. It starts to. It smacks of Flash. It oozes with Flash.
Recognize it. So I just use much more of a generic.
Right. So same deal with Unity. You're like, oh, this is probably a Unity game because it feels like a Unity game because
it does it have to be three? I mean, it's like it can do 3D. So what we have to do it because it can do it.
It's a 3D.
In it.
What's that?
Like didn't Gabe made his game 2D in Unity?
He did. However, a caveat: it's a 3D engine where 2D can be accomplished by looking down one axis perfectly without any. So that's how you achieve 2D. And basically, in order for Gabe's a fellow developer of ours, in order for him to do it, not that he couldn't have done it on his own, he used a paid add-on which kind of eased the transition. Somebody had built a little.
Who are you telling that? Oh, I see, because this is going out to the wider public. So how many people are actually watching us now or listening to us?
Oh, probably nobody.
Oh, well.
Yeah, in fact, it says 0 viewers, but that's okay because it goes on. It goes on YouTube, and people can just watch it after at their leisure.
I think of all the ones you've had so far, this is the one that's the most valuable.
I think so. It's got a lot of technical information in it. It's got a lot of things that people will find years from now and demonize me for. I think it's very valuable.
It was over my head a little bit, but that's all right.
Yeah, I realize that. I apologize.
I was thinking about it today. I was thinking about you mentioned Photoshop. Well, actually, I was having a conversation with my wife about QuickBooks, about bookkeeping software.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
How they want you to. How she hasn't bought bookkeeping software in 6 years because it just works.
Exactly.
But bookkeeping isn't going to change. Why come out with a new software? It's one thing if you have to have updated tax information, but so I started thinking about Photoshop and thinking, well, I had Photoshop back when you guys were probably both in kindergarten, and and really it did everything that I still use. I don't use Photoshop. I use a PinShot Pro from 15 years ago. It does everything that I need to do basically.
Mm.
It's like at a certain point, you manipulating a pixel, that's it. You can change the color, shape, size, whatever, transparency, and you're limited. So these softwares, they have new versions that come out. They got all these newfangled things.
Mm-hmm.
But at a certain point, then the business model sort of breaks down because you got to figure out why people are going to pay you to subscribe to Photoshop.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting. So certainly every newer version of Photoshop I've found has been genuinely better tools, better performance, all that good stuff. I've found it to be much better. That being said, you hang on to a version of it for 4 years or whatever more if you can help it. And yeah, Adobe realizes there's no frickin' money in that. Or not as much money.
Well, it's like digital cameras. Well, we expect every year that the digital camera is going to have a higher megapixel. At a certain point, it really doesn't make any difference how high the megapixel.
Right. Yeah. My wife's SLR is 20.1 megapixels. It's pretty darn good.
Well, it's useless.
I'm using we got it as a wedding present like 10 years ago. It's fine.
Yeah. So it's it's a utility and value. That's really what it's all about. But yeah, and then companies get to the point now where they're like, we'd like to take the choice out of your hand, and that you can't use the software unless you pay us recurring fees. And right. I can see, there are two schools of thought on that. One is that software is a tangible item, and it kind of is and it kind of isn't. And because basically, as I'm sure you all know, you buy a CD-ROM, which nobody uses anymore, but let's say you buy a CD-ROM and you own the media itself, but you don't own the code, and if it ceases to work, you have no recourse, and you can't engineer it yourself. So now they've basically said, we're not going to give you anything, we're going to serve it up to you, and we're going to make sure that you keep paying us for it. And it's their prerogative as far as I'm concerned. That's how they decide to sell their software. I think if there's a big enough pushback from it, then other markets will rise up to fill that.
Yeah. Why don't they just go to open up make it freeware and open up a Patreon?
Yeah, there you go.
Photoshop Patreon.
The other benefit though is that it does new Photoshop. I think it's Creative Cloud is like $20 a month or something. So it's not cheap.
Well, no, it's relatively
per se.
If you use it a lot, I mean, if you use it in your work, yeah.
$240 a year.
Right.
I mean,
so yeah, it's not cheap. It's not cheap if you're not using it. If you're using
really
it, it's cheap.
Free.
What's that?
Free is really not cheap.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it. Free, if you mean that you're the product and it's a big problem, then yeah.
No, not that. But just if, I have for all my photo editing, which I do pretty good. I have like I say, a 15-year-old Paint Shop Pro, which I bought for $100 years ago, and it's been on at least 20 computers, and the GIMP, which is free. What do I need Photoshop for?
Well, I can tell you, CS6, Photoshop CS6, is worlds better than GIMP.
What does it do that I can't do now?
Well, okay, I'll give you one of the hardest hitting features. So sometimes you're editing a photo and you're realizing, oh, there's this thing in here that I don't want to be in here. Let me go in and paint it. They have tools where you can just actually brush right over it, and it figures out how to fill that space for you. It's called the Heal tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a raw image that you took on your camera, and you import into the...
Yep. And let's say there's somebody standing in the way of something that you like, right?
Yeah.
Within a large amount of time, you can... It doesn't always work, but it works most of the time, and it's actually a useful tool. I use it all the time.
Okay.
You can paint over them, and then the software figures out how to fill that based on the rest of the image of what should be behind them.
Okay.
So that's it's pretty darn good. and that's so that's a
basically-
valuable feature.
So basically, it's really handy if you're on like /B or something and you want to like come up with a witty Photoshop. in 10 seconds.
It's really helpful for photographers. It's helpful for game developers where you want to be able to utilize some stock art, but you have to mod it. Let me see. I have it open here.
The artwork for
Rebel and 96 mil and everything.
96 mil, particularly your new game.
Yeah,
You take that yourself?
my wife did actually.
Okay, so yeah, so these are all just photographs that you took, and then
Yep.
you modified them.
Yep, exactly.
You're pretty comfortable with a photo editing software.
Absolutely, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing is that, so once you've learned a piece of photo editing software, you
Yeah.
don't really want to have to relearn it because you get really good at it.
True.
So I've got, I don't know, since 2000. So what's that, 16 years?
Yeah, it's an
16
investment.
Yeah, 16 years. So I can use Photoshop. We don't have Photoshop at my job anymore because we didn't, re-get it. And I grabbed the GIMP. Oh man, it's like getting kicked in the shin every time you're trying to do something that should
I
be
agree.
natural. And it's
Yeah,
just
I mean,
because I don't know
That's
it.
what I use, but I've used Photoshop Elements 2, CS5 something, and GIMP, all interchangeably over the years. And yeah, I mean GIMP is better in some ways,
Yeah, it's all very serviceable.
but
And
it's crap code. And lately, like the 2.8 or 3.0, they've been, it's been the modern UI push. They've just been fucking everything up, making
Yeah.
everything harder than it has to be.
yeah,
UI.
like I hit a lot of UI cruft in
Yeah,
in
and they're
GIMP.
not adding useful new features.
No, and it was just some of the things which Photoshop has made really simple, and I feel like they should have been able to just rip it from the headlines,
Yeah.
and make it just work the same way. It's just not that good. Like the idea of trying to copy and paste things with their marquee tools. Their marquee tools aren't very great. That's another example of a feature, right? So we all know what the lasso tool is.
Yep.
Right. So Photoshop has a magnetic lasso tool, right?
Yep.
So what you do is you do your best to trace something when you're trying to lasso it, and the tool actually looks at image information contrast and finds the edge for you.
Yeah, it has some sort of value to that, so it can kind of like the magic wand where you can.
Yeah, there's an affinity.
Tolerance.
Yep. So that's
Yeah,
another
it's really
thing where
handy.
it's like instead of me sitting there, like dodging around trying to get an edge, the magnetic lasso tool just goes and sticks right to the edge of it. And I'm
Let me
like,
ask you this, Raymond.
Yep.
Because you work with Photoshop and you also do code and stuff like that. And this is just a weird question, but
Sure.
so I break down my tasks that I have to do with this game. I break it down into two tasks.
Mhm.
One is content creation,
Yep.
which is mainly pixel manipulation,
Mhm.
and the other is code and cleaning things up and putting new.
Sure.
In. So code is very hard. It seems like it's taxing on the brain. The brain can work 4 or 5 hours doing that, and that's it. Then it needs to go to sleep.
Okay.
But with pixel editing, I could probably do it 24 hours straight if I could stay up that long. In other words, it's much less taxing. I can listen to music and do pixel editing. I can't listen to music and do anything with code.
Oh wow.
Oh,
I'll tell you, it's the reverse for me. I can code for hours and hours on end, but sometimes I'll step into Photoshop, and I'm like, okay, I got to work on this logo, and I'll know about 15 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, it's just not going to work today. It's just you have crappy ideas, nothing's flowing. So
I get it.
yeah, so for me though, code it has creativity to it, but it's not the same level of creativity. And I obviously program better than I art.
that
Just
makes sense.
naturally.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and yeah, as far as breaking down tasks and everything, just thinking about it. Yeah, I mean, code, obviously, sort of the underlying engine mechanics, making sure that all works. And then you prototype features with some, cruddy graphics, and then once it's looking good, you start to get better graphics in. But what you do, there's a distinct line for me between doing sort of engine and code development and then writing and implementing sort of story or narrative or graphics, which, are sort of very heavily in the kind of games that I write. Yeah. So, I usually dedicate particular days to it. Like there's a day, these last couple days actually, it was me pretty much ripping out, the user account system from my, website and game and etc., and implementing the new methods by which it, holds its key ring and how it saves its games and all that. So that was all a couple days of really just heavily code focused. And then there were a couple of days before that where I had just finished some code, finalizing my new event system, and then I was like, oh boy, now I get to play with my new event system. So I was implementing these scares, because 96mm has a lot of scares in it. So I was just having a ball, purchasing sounds on SoundSnap for, stingers as well as sound effects, doing some quick graphics inside of Photoshop, and then just integrating them with my tool, to produce these scares really quickly. One of the first ones which I did was, it's a cheap oldie but a goodie, and it was very effective, is you just, walk into this room here, and you're looking at the sky, and then a big, clap of lightning will go off. And, very good sound effect, very easy graphic, and it was effective. I, shared the game with a couple of folks, and they told me, they're like, oh, I had my wife play it, and it surprised her. And I was like, excellent. So, I'm doing my best to kind of Kleenex test it as I go as well, and just get a sense of, am I doing the right thing? Is this scaring people?
Yeah, it's that's where the fun is, I think. Especially when you create something that you're not sure how it's going to come out. You have an idea, but then you realize it surprises you sometimes how good it can be, and sometimes you think, huh, that was pretty lucky.
Oh, exactly right. I looked at that. I was like, ooh, all I'm doing is, I show the lightning bolt, and then I fade it off really quickly with, exposure out, easing tween. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, ooh, that looks really good, actually. Mm-hmm. And, the image itself isn't that great, but the moment you pair it with the right sound effect,
yeah,
you got it. So that's sort of like that whole other segment of where it's, basically you're writing. It's not writing the story, but I used to have a word for it, and I seem to have forgotten the word. It's just implementing the game. What's that?
Like scripting?
Yeah, it's scripting the game. I used to have a word for it. I can't think of it.
It's like, I kind of divide mine into engineering, scripting, and writing and art.
Right.
And the writing would just be like
storyboard.
You're just typing in a text file. You're not worried about the coding aspect of it. You're just brainstorming.
And then it's kind of funny. You get to this point where you start implementing some stuff, and it really quickly you invariably end up with like the notepad full of the rough edges. Like, that should have made a sound effect. That was too fast. That was too slow. This person didn't know what was going on here. Do you know what I mean? And you end up with this gigantic pad, and then you have to go and you implement all those things, make sure you don't create any bugs, and then you test it again. Oh, that's better, that's better. Yeah. So then you just refine until you release it. Notice I didn't say get it good.
Do you spend a lot of time searching for sound effects, and is it an easy
I do. I spend a lot of time searching for sound effects. It's actually kind of difficult. In antiquity, I tried to use free sound effects as much as I could, because I was adverse to paying for anything, because that's me. And I've pretty much given up, and then I'm like, if I want good sound effects without any sort of questionable rights issues, I really, I'm using SoundSnap now, which is, it's okay. It's easy and it's relatively cheap. The sound effects are like $1.40 each, which is not terrible. I would like it to be cheaper, but I'm not going to hold out on it.
I'm just wondering. It's not. There's no formula, but not necessarily. But rather than looking for a particular sound effect, just I create my own sound effects. It's actually easier to start from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, there are some tools that can do an okay job, but it really depends on the game. It really does.
Sure.
I mean, if you're talking about like sort of, zany interface stuff, that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
But in a horror game, you want to get some good stuff. And I mean, if you have high quality recording background, you can probably do a good bit, but it's like I'm not going to go sit out in the rain and wait for a thunderbolt. It's very romantic, but it's just not going to happen.
That's the kind of thing you can generate, though.
Yeah, it's true.
Some effects,
it's true. But also, I mean, that's the other thing is the sort of division of mind share for me. It's really huge. If I'm having a blockage of where I'm gonna finish this scare, and it's like, oh, I just have to go make this sound, I would rather go just find and buy this sound, because it'll take me, I don't know, on average 3 to 5 minutes to find the exact sound that I want to use from SoundSnap, which is not bad, plus the cost.
Not at all.
Yeah, and sometimes it's longer. It depends, but yeah, 3 to 5 minutes I'd say is probably about.
But
about
5
right.
minutes and $1.40.
Mm.
It ain't much.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely worth it. Especially most of the sound effects they have there are really good quality. And for something like this, I want something with a nice, sort of, crispity, glassy kind of feel to it. I don't want to have any fairly low quality stuff, which I know that if I recorded myself would invariably be the case.
Yeah, you got to get your good mics, preferably more than one.
Yeah.
And a nice, perfectly quiet environment. You record your, like 20 takes of the same sound.
Right. So for me, it doesn't make sense. I don't care. I'm not an audiophile to that extent. So that's one place that I will afford it. And one thing that I've never been able to do, obviously, is music for my games. So I've mostly been able to find people who have been nice enough to compose it for either, a percentage of, sales or sometimes even for free. But I think for Revel and a lot of other games, I'm going to try and lean more on, hopefully relatively good paid stuff if I can do it. And obviously, Tom's got some cool stuff that he's let me use.
I have a lot of stuff from my past you might be interested in.
Oh, there you go. So those are all things. I definitely welcome all the local music I can that, fits into it, because it's just, it's nice when you're like, oh yeah, so-and-so did that music. It's cool when you have sort of the backstory. One of the interesting ones, if you watched it, we had this interview about Static, which was, our first FMV game. Being an FMV game, it involves a lot of people. So it has so much information that you don't get if you just played it. If you learn about the backstory, there's so much that went into it. People, interesting stuff that you'd never know unless you saw the making of. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that's basically what that interview was. We got to sort of tell the making of, because one of the most interesting parts about Static. It's not the best game in the world, but that we actually we got somebody to give us a treadmill for free on Craigslist, and I spray painted it chroma key green, and we had actors walk on the treadmill to make the walking animations. Inside the Eastworks, which we brought this up in that rickety ass elevator. So
I know that elevator.
Yeah, so that's just something that you would never know about unless we said it. But it was just sort of the DIY ethic. We don't know how we're gonna do people walking in place. We're gonna spray paint a treadmill green, of course. So it's so I like that. I really like to do more sort of post-mortem stuff like that and have it be available, because it is interesting, especially if you like the game, to hear about all the little details that went into it. I mean, even with your games that probably don't involve, I would guess, as many other people or aspects like that. There's humorous stories of things that happen. I mean, certainly all of your trials with Jane Austen Manors, I think, is going to be very, very interesting in the long term.
Yeah, but it's like I guess it's like raising kids. You forget all the crappy stuff. You just
Oh yeah, you get rose tint. Oh well, I remember, I remember in particular when we were doing that said treadmill walk. My wife had gotten a cold, so she was sick, and she used to work overnights at Cutchin's, as a Melu counselor. So she was in bad shape, and we're like trying to hold this together and get all the stuff. So yeah, you look back on it, it's like, oh yeah, we did. But it was actually a horrible day.
All right, so hang on a second.
Yeah.
Because you seem to kind of gloss over when I said I've got some stuff in the archive that you might be interested in that I did.
Oh yeah, no, I don't mean to.
Just all right. So I did this because I was bored years ago. 20 years ago, probably. Let's see.
Yeah.
90. Oh Jesus, more than that. Okay, wait, it's not important. So it's a whole symphonic thing that I put together, right? And it sounds a little tinny, but I'm just gonna. So this is like 36 minutes long. I'm gonna play it now, and I'm just gonna play little clips from it. Okay?
Sure.
Okay. So first of all, I want to know. Can you hear that? Okay.
I can.
Okay. All right.
Nice. Oh yeah, that's got that old school feel to it. Wow, that was good stuff back then, actually.
I'm just skipping around, okay?
Yeah, no, yeah.
All right, that just gives you a little bit of a...
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, what's very interesting is that's all extremely reminiscent of a series of games that I really like, King's Quest, which is sort of a, kind of a fantasy medieval set of adventure games. I mean, obviously you've heard of King's Quest. You couldn't have, lived without hearing about King's Quest back in the day.
You underestimate me.
You underestimate me. They were extremely popular set of adventure games through the 90s. So anyway, it sounds a lot like that. Very good stuff, and it probably could find its way into Revel, I think, if you were interested.
Well, it's the thing is, I did this, and it just sits there doing nothing.
Yeah.
There's no obligation for it.
I think that some of it could definitely work.
You want to use it, you can.
Okay, well, I think that would be good. We'll talk more about that on Friday.
I've got other stuff, too. I've not just that, but got piano and jazz, all sorts of crap. Yeah. I spent a lot of time working on music for no reason other than just because I liked it.
Just creative output, huh?
Wasting my time, basically.
Yeah, I hear that. But, maybe it won't be a waste of time if it gets used at this point. And I'm definitely open to it.
Life, maybe just a little credit at the end,
Oh, absolutely. Of course, credit. No credit to the company store or anything. Now, we get you some free copies. There you go, right?
Be nothing without me.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it is funny, all of our games have been, save for Static, which didn't have any music practically, were really praised for their music, probably because I had no hand in it. And I think likewise, it could certainly work.
Did we lose Tom?
Tom, you still there?
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, I'm here.
All right. Well, I think we need to wrap up.
I agree. But, yeah, so this was a great one. Thank you for attending, guys. I really appreciate it. And hopefully some people will find this information useful. If nothing else, we can laugh at ourselves in, 5 years.
This one's the Smithsonian.
Yeah, exactly. And And it's good. So good luck on all of your gaming endeavors.
See you on Friday. I'm going to see if I can get a few other people to. Let's see what Pat's up to and any of his friends. See if they want.
Yeah, that would be good. I might try to have a showing of what I've got going on for 96 mil so far.
Absolutely.
I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, it can be like a 96 mil preview.
Oh yeah.
Lift the curtain up a little bit. So, what about Gabe? Is he like? Did he disappear?
No, I work with him. He works at my workplace. I see him every day. So okay. I'll ping him about it, but he might be busy.
Yeah. It is Friday night, and if you're an eligible bachelor.
Oh yeah, he's a real.
He still got the little place in Whately?
Yeah, he's got the trailer in Whately.
I love trial. Those are the days.
Oh man, we haven't been there yet. Or at least
I have. I've been there.
Oh man.
Not missing much. It's an okay place. It's an okay place. So yeah, anyway, I will see you all on Friday. Hopefully Gabe will be there, and I look forward to talking more on all this, maybe seeing some games, and probably not eating a lot of junk food because I am dieting.
Oh yeah, we're looking forward to seeing the new Raymond.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can detect 40 pounds down, but you should be able to. My wife says I look thinner, and that's something because normally, not such positive.
That's like a toddler.
Yeah, pretty. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's almost a 50-pound a bag of cement. I can definitely tell the difference, just physically, it's really good. And I'm happy and excited. I think it's going to be a much better quality of life.
Well, good for you. It's what it takes people don't think of this like what kind of effort does it take not to do something, but actually, it takes a lot of effort.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, people say like, okay, well, don't buy cigarettes, that's one thing if you're a smoker or something. But the problem, especially with eating, is you still have to eat. So you're faced with the same decisions of like not eating crap or not eating this. And yeah, so it takes a lot of willpower. But I have a couple of theories on it. The one being that at a certain point in your life, you come to the realization that, yeah, you're going to just, start eating healthier and stop eating crap. And then the other thing is that your tastes change over time. So you get to the realization that, yeah, I don't have to be on a constant sugar drip in order to, enjoy things. One of the main testaments, I think, is, I used to drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee, extra cream, extra sugar all the time, which is, if you've ever done that, it's incredibly sweet. Mm-hmm. And then I finally, quit getting sugar in it, and there was a time when I couldn't even believe it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so bitter. And then I came to love coffee without sugar in it.
Yeah, you can do that. You probably have, because at one point I realized all the sugar I was consuming just in drinking.
Exactly.
Just like sodas or whatever. So.
Yep.
We bend the rules a little bit, but for the most part, black coffee, no sugar. I drink tea with no sugar for the most part. So that's probably the easiest thing to give up on. The things that are tough is giving up on like chocolate, for me anyway.
Yeah, it's thankfully it's not so bad. I had given up pretty much sugar so no soda and no sugar in coffee or tea or anything. I had done that about 3 years now. I started when I was in the Eastworks, and I had a couple of dips in it, but generally I was, steadfast on it. And I was hoping that, okay, this is easy. I can do this. I have the willpower for this, and I'm going to see some change. And unfortunately, I saw absolutely no change, and I was still gaining weight. So I was either eating my net or I merely slowed down my ascent. So what's that?
I was just going to say that I'm definitely looking forward to hearing more about this.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Do you mean on Friday or now?
Yeah, on Friday, yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, we will do it on Friday then.
Sounds good.
Have a great evening.
All right. Peace out.
Bye, Tom. Bye, Jeff.
See you then.